So today, what I'm going to talk basically is the ways that we can help our children prepare to read. And the practices or ways or forms to help them are 5, and they are speaking, singing, reading, writing, and playing. The parents or the child care providers can use these practices with children of different ages, and they are easy to do, easy to make, and you can incorporate in your early daily routine. So we talk about these specific practices in a little bit, and first I would like to begin defining what it is early literacy. And early literacy is just what children know about reading and writing before they can read and write. So it's not the teaching of reading, but it's the foundation of it. It's expose children to reading, to books. Thus, so they are prepared once that they start the school. It's not that we have to teach them how to read. They have to be prepared to read later. And that's the early literacy, what early literacy means.
So, Martin, I have a question that I'd like to put in the chat.
Yeah.
For the participants, and I'm going to do that right now. It says, "Why is early literacy important for me and my child?"
That's excellent answer. Always the early literacy, the first 5 years of the life of a child are the ones that are the children's guide for life. These years are crucial to help children be ready to read when they begin school. So something that we always stress is whether the child is 4 days old or 4 years old, it is never too early or too late to help them develop important, literacy and pre-reading skills. And also to stress is that doing this earlier will make it easier for the child to learn to read when they start to at the school. So that's important to stress, trying to do it as early as we can. So again, the first 5 years form the guide for life for that kid. That's why it's crucial, and that's why it's important, early literacy. So parents, of course, know their children better than anyone. As a parent, your child or child care provider, they are tremendous role models. You're the children first teachers, and the children learn a lot by watching them and doing things with their parents. They imitate their behaviors, they imitate their manners. But also, again, it's not just parents, can be significant others, can be family members, can be childcare providers, anybody that is interacting with that kid when parents are absent for one reason or another. This, again, can be family members like grandparents and childcare professionals. So in the next slide, we are going to see, and we're going to have an idea of brain development. And let's take a moment and just look at the human brain. And in the first column, in all the columns, you're going to see dots. And those dots represent the brain cells, the neurons. And the lines that you see coming out of the nerve cells they are what is called the synapses, the connections between the brain cells. So when the baby is born, there are almost no connections among the neurons, as you can see in the first column. However, every time children use sensory experiences like smelling, hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, connections are being made between the brain cells all the time. So it is through this process that the learning takes place. In the first years of the child's life, and you're going to see this in those columns, babies make a huge number of connections, of neural connections. And the large quantity of connections that young children have means that their brains still are not efficient. It is hard for them to distinguish what is important, what to focus on, and what is background. So around the age 3, so you can see, for example, in the fourth column, age 2, which basically covers the whole column. So around the age 3, the brain starts the pruning process, what is called the pruning process, and that is keeping only the connections that are repeated. So these connections, the synapses that are used more frequently, are the ones that will continue throughout the life of that child, of that person. So you can see in the last column, you have less connections, less synapses. The brain cells, the neurons are bigger, and that's really what defines us. Is what we do, what we like, what we are interested in, and the rest, we don't need it anymore. So that's the pruning process. I start to get more focus on what we like, on what we have to do, and get rid of anything else that we really don't need. This is like a very simple way of explaining it. Let me see. It's always important to remember that early experiences have a decisive impact on the architecture of the child's brain. And this is a reason of the importance of children to learn the skills which will help them when they begin school. So now we see in this graphic, you can see the importance of a parent's speech in the child's vocabulary. We see in the horizontal line at the bottom the age in months, and the vertical one is the vocabulary size. How many words the child is going to understand. So the more, and the lines in the middle, so of course, it shows the speech or how much the parents talk to their child. So you see the first or the upper line is parents are talking frequently, interact frequently with their children. And you can see that those children are going to incorporate at least 800 words in their vocabulary. And you can see also the difference with the lower line, which is basically 4 times less than if the mother or the father speak frequently, often. So the more parents talk and introduce new words, the more the child will learn that vocabulary. So remember about the connections, the synapses in the brain of the child. The more words children hear, the more connections they are going to increase. So this process of speech can strengthen the child's future language skills and overall ability to learn. And remember also, like food is a nutrient to the body, words are nutrients to the brain well before the baby can pronounce any of them. So if we go to the next slide. Okay. So children need to know the meaning of words, being objects, actions, concepts, feelings, or ideas. And by vocabulary, we mean the meaning of words, what the words mean. We all can help our children to expand the vocabulary that they hear, the vocabulary that we tell them. Also, knowing meaning, knowing vocabulary, what words mean, will help the children to understand what written words mean once they begin reading. So if we can go to the next slide. Again, here you're going to see the practices that parents can do. And these practices, like we mentioned before, can be very easily included in the daily routines of parents. And as we mentioned before, is talk, sing, read, write, and play. In the next slide, please. So the 5 practices provide learning experiences for children of different ages and interests, but these experiences have to be fun. Getting, for example, ready to read requires variety of skills. You know, some children learn these skills earlier and faster than others, and it's like walking. Kids are going to learn faster, earlier than others. So when you use these 5 practices, you can help children learn important pre-reading skills that are appropriate for their ages and interests. And another thing that I always try to stress is that we shouldn't push our kids to practice these skills, these activities. And especially when reading, you know, sometimes parents tend to force children to read or with them, or even punish them. And if we do that, we are going to make the child associate punishment or something bad with reading. And that is going to be a problem for the child to really like these different activities, to do these different activities with their parents and eventually in the school. That's why it's important to have fun when we do these activities. So the next slide, please. So again, this is the first practice, speak, and this is a natural practice. It's very important, of course, because it's natural. It's when the children learn all kinds of vocabulary. This practice doesn't have the same effect as the child is watching a television. This is also important. Parents often say that their children are mesmerized by what is on the screen, and that they are focusing. Parents, in fact, you know, the baby cannot look away because of the way the baby's brain is programmed to look at what is new. And every second the image on the TV changes, it does not allow the child to retain meaning, to interact, to participate in this process. So it's important that we talk to our children the more we can. We should talk as much as we can. There are games that are more than appropriate for the little ones to learn new words, and parents also can ask questions that require simple answers when they're still very, very little. One of the pictures here, and this is a very interesting example of vocabulary, of building vocabulary. You see the little child pointing at her nose, and the mother is going to tell when the child points at the nose, nose. It's going to say the word nose. The mother is going to point at her nose and is going to repeat the same, and then to the nose of the baby, and the same thing. And the baby is not going to be able to say nose, but she's going to be able to understand what nose means, what nose is. And that's the interesting part of this practice of talking. Now, we start to expose children to words, and so they can learn what they mean. The next slide, please. So older children like also games to identify objects. For toddlers, for example, the important thing is to ask open-ended questions, such as what did you play with your friends? What's the best part of your day? Why? So it's important to ask questions that have more than a no or a yes as an answer. And this is going to encourage the child to think about possible answers and to ask more questions. And of course, this is going to increase the comprehension of skills of the child. And the next slide, please. Okay, so again, talking helps your child get ready to read. Make sure that the child has lots of opportunities to talk with the parent, not just listen to what the parents say. The parent has to respond to what the child says and follow his or her lead. Answer the child's question. There has to be an interaction. So the parent's explanation of those questions help the child learn more about the world environment, the world that is surrounding him or her. So if the child isn't talking yet, ask a question anyway. Wait for her to react with a gesture or by babbling, baby talking, and then give feedback by playing, making faces, or just responding in the same way as the baby talks, by babbling. Ask also the child to tell about something that happened to her, to him today, as more details as the child can expand, so the child can expand stories. And the next slide, please. Okay, this is also very important, especially for parents that don't, parents whose first language is not English. So it's very important to speak to the child in the language the parent knows the best. Now, the maternal language, the native language, is really important to stress this. If English is not the first language, it's going to talking in the native language. It's going to allow to explain things to the child more fluently. And I always give the example of my daughters when they were little. And because Spanish is my first language and my English was very limited, it would have been awful at this service for my children because they wouldn't learn English properly, and also they wouldn't learn Spanish because I tried to speak the new language, the language of the country where they are now. So having a strong foundation in a first language, for example, in my case, Spanish, makes acquiring a second language easier for the child. And that's when they start to interact with other people that speak English or even other languages with other kids. You know, the children have an incredible capacity of absorption. And if they know the meaning of the word in their parents' native language, they can learn the word in other languages easier because the meaning is the same. The word is different, but the meaning is the same.
Martin, I have a question to ask the participants before we move on.
Yes.
In the chat. And that is, I know that when I was a baby and a toddler, I was exposed to 3 different languages through, my dad's was French. My native language or my home language was English. My mom's native language was English, but the language of my grandparents was also French and Armenian, a very little known language. So as a baby and a toddler interacting with all those different languages, I thought was an asset. So I'd like to ask the participants, I'm going to put it in the chat, the questions in the chat, and it says, what languages are part of your child or your own, what languages were you exposed to as a child while growing up or while young? Or if you have a child who's maybe in a childcare situation, they may be exposed to some languages as well.
Totally. One of the things that I've seen visiting childcare providers is that the childcare provider can have, speak in one language, and kids, as you say, Leslie, speak other languages from their homes. And you can see the kids playing among themselves and no problem at all. It's like they can understand what they are doing. It's super interesting that just to observe.
Dalila says, we spoke Spanish in my home and also exposed to English.
Yeah, that's great. To know, for example, Dalila, what it says about Spanish at home and exposed to English, but the home language was Spanish, and that's connected with what Gina you are saying, which is perfect. No, it is. It's by observation you can see that, and it's true. So this is, is the best way that we can do. Just to talk our native language and give the example for how was our upbringing of our kids when they come to when we come to the country and they are born here, or they come when they were little. So let's talk about the second practice now. Sing, and this is another natural practice. Song, again, is a natural way of learning vocabulary. They help children develop listening skills and pay attention to the rhythms and rhymes of language. So it's a very important pre-reading skill. Singing helps also slow down speaking. It's a slower way of speaking. We use different sounds, timbres, pitches, tones, and those different sounds allow the children to capture each word individually. In some songs, we can clap, for example, to help children listen to each syllable of the word. And that's very important. We use all these different tools, clapping, making movements to accompany the song, so children learn more, understand more the meaning of those words. Again, vocabulary. For example, just I'm going to tell you, for example, with the Itsy Bitsy Spider, that song there. So when we sing, talking about movement, when we sing the Itsy Bitsy Spider, the Itsy Bitsy Spider went up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Up came the sun and dried all the rain, and the itsy bitsy spider went up the spout again. So when you're doing those movements, it helps the child to learn vocabulary. And also, again, we can clap that so it's easier for the child to look at the reading of the word. And you can see there is rhyme, which is going to help the kid to memorize those words much better. The next slide, please. Great. And this is a big, big thing. This is more than a natural thing, it's a cultural thing. And because a lot of cultures don't use they don't have a written tradition. So we are going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about wordless books and how important is the storytelling. So read to learn new words. You know, books are a great way to spend time talking and learning new words. And reading together with children is the single most important way to help them get ready to read. When you read a story, it's important also to stop from time to time to have a conversation about an interesting word. We have to give the child opportunities to ask and make comments, and it is the interaction with the parent that makes reading special and important. Children learn more new words with books than with our conversations, for example. It's not that we don't know the words, but we don't use them so frequently, and then they appear in the books, so the children can learn new ones. And another thing that we have to take into account is that books in itself are a tool for conversation. It's not just reading. It's a way, it's a great way, or it's a good object, good tool to use to have a conversation with the child. We have, at least when we do story times in the library, so we always said that there is a threefold rule. You know, read a book at least 3 times to learn new vocabulary, because repetition helps the children remember what the new words mean. Many times, children, we start to read a book, and the children like the book, and she or he wants to keep reading the book several times, and they keep, and that's important. Of course, you know, there's a point that we have to change the story so they can learn new words, but that shows you, you know, repetition is going to help them. Even if you do it, or if they do it, is, you know, if they grab the book, is important, you know. So by reading as well as by writing, it's going to allow the child to be aware that also that print has meaning. Running, for example, when we run a finger under the words, it's going to help the child to associate the word with its meaning. And children begin to become aware that printed words represent spoken words. And when they see their parents reading or writing, or reading posters, signs, they start to associate the importance of reading, that you have to use it. But also the parents can use, for example, the signs on the streets or the brands in boxes. They can use that to help kids to learn new words, even if they are brands, because the kid can associate that brand with the product, you know. The next slide, the one that we are seeing now is different kinds of books. We have predictable books where the child, of course, predicts what is coming, and the child needs to use words for that. It helps the child to start to use the words of, to start to put into practice their vocabulary. They have to imagine what is coming. That's to infer is very, very important. They have to use their imagination. Then we have informative nonfiction books. They introduce many more words and information with a more complex vocabulary than in other books. And this is going to, of course, to help children become more aware of words and interested in learning new ones. Not necessarily we have to read an informative book. When the kids are little, we can just talk and trying to explain what is in a picture, what is in an illustration that is in that non-fiction or informative book. Books with rhymes and rhythm are always fun. Kids love them. And again, the fact that it has rhymes is going to help to memorize words, and have also rhythm makes a way of increasing their the perception of sound. They start to see all these different sounds of each word. So that's important. And finally, wordless books. And this has to do also with what I was saying before about those cultures that don't have a written language, but they use storytelling. And the same with wordless books. There is no written text. What the child or we are going to read is not text, but pictures. And another thing that is fun for children is that wordless books reading is different every time that the story is told. And this is totally okay. And it's different every time that it's told by the child or also by the parents. And there is also the possibility also to predict. And, it's a great for encouraging child to infer what is happening in the story. So they have to figure all this out. They have to use illustrations and their imagination. This is not only going to develop comprehension, but on overall understanding of the story structure and the plot of a story. Again, remember, books are tools for conversations and to learn new vocabulary. Then we have right to learn new words. And when we say the word right, parents tend to freak out because they think that they have to teach their kids, their children to write. And writing is more than that. You can see the picture at the top of the slide, and it's just a doodle. It's a drawing, it's very abstract, and it's important because the child can develop their muscles, develop their coordination, the muscles of the hand and the fingers, and their coordination to eventually being able to write. This is also a good way, doing this practice is a good way for having a conversation with the child. For example, with the first picture, the one that is a doodle, the child shows us that picture. And there is where we can have or begin a conversation. What did you do here? What is this? Can you tell me more about this? So there, not only we allow the child to use their vocabulary, but also gives or helps the child with their self-esteem. You know, they are explaining what they do, and we are listening. And for them, it's very important that we really respect what they are saying, and that we are curious about what they are saying. Then we have in the second picture, the child draw a person. It is more realistic. We know there is a person now, and the child also wrote her or his name, and which is basically the first word most of children write, if not all. Many times still in this stage, when they start to write, sometimes they write a letter upside down or in different way, and that's okay, but it's also important that we talk about that, and we can write under in different color, or also in a different paper, write the correct way of that name. So the child can see it and can start to remember that the way that the name really has to be written. And then we can see in the bottom picture, this much more realistic. There are sentences already there. This is all basically, that's it, you know, ready to school. But again, children learn in different ways, and some faster or earlier than others. That doesn't mean that the child is going to be brighter or not in the future, but it's going to be different. So again, writing is not about writing letters. It's about all this process. We are talking about early literacy, exposing children to these practices so they can learn how to read or write. So yeah, play. I played again, and I mentioned it at the beginning, at least for me, and for what I see when I do story times, is that we incorporate in playing all the other practices. But at the same time, we have to have, when we do the other practices, we have to make them in a way that is going to be fun for the child. So one of the things about playing is that children realize when they play that one thing can mean or transform into something else. And this is going to help children understand that words represent real objects and experiences. For example, a pencil becomes a magic wand. Or they can play that they are the times where the dinosaurs were alive, or that they are astronauts or explorers, whatever comes into their imagination. But that's real for them, and connects them with the reality around, because those are things that exist or have existed. And that is, it's their work. They are using their imagination, their reason. It is super important playing. You know, it's the best thing that kids can do. That's their work. That's what they like to do. And also we can do, if we go to the next slide.
Martin, can I take a moment to ask some of the participants about their child's favorite play activities?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put a question in the chat, and the question is, what are some of your child's favorite play activities? There it is, and you can put your responses in the chat. Some of the most frequently shared responses have been, my child loves splashing in the water and making mud pies. Another one that we had was loves climbing and throwing objects. We have jumping on the trampoline while, oh wow, jumping on the trampoline while, hold on a second, while I throw toys back and forth to them. That's child's work. That's multitasking. He's getting ready for a future multitasking job.
So cool.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing those.
Yeah, nothing so beautiful than seeing children playing. It's so much fun. Yeah. So we go, yes, this is playing with words. It's not just with objects or running, or we can play with words. And for example, a good game is I Spy. Now that's an excellent example. You know, I spy with my little eyes, something that begins with S, S. And the child has to start to say words that begin with S or with T. And so they say tiger. And that's an example of to build a sound awareness, for example. You know, when something that starts with S, 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 or T, T. Another is visual perception. You know, I spy with my little eyes something that is red, or something that is bright, something that is round, or large, or blue. So that it is a way of practicing visual perception. Lot of things that you can do playing, not just with objects or using the body. It doesn't have to be a physical game. We can play with words, and that helps a lot the child to learn new ones and to absorb more of those words, absorb the meaning of those words. And the next, yes, this is make your home a comfortable place to learn. And this is for anybody, you know, a comfortable place can be anywhere at home. It can be even in the kitchen, to have a table with books or a basket with toys. And but use a place that maybe if we use it in a regular basis as a routine, the child identify the place that is where he or she is going to have fun or learn. So it's something easy that we can do. We don't need money to make it that way. And finally, well, yeah, this is just a recount. The library is going to help your children to get ready to read. And this is all these 5 practices, something that we always use in the story times, and they are incorporated also in many programs in the library, even in resources that we offer through our site, for example.
So Martin, I have a
yes.
question. I have a question for the participants that I think you're really interested in, and there's no right or wrong answers, but we're going to take a little bit of a poll, so I'm going to launch it right now on the screen, and it's how often do you and your child visit or engage virtually, which we're doing a lot more of now, with your local library? And if you could choose one, weekly, monthly, 4 times a year, or we have not engaged with our library yet, but maybe you plan to soon.
That's cool. Yeah, it is.
We've got 4 times a year. Some people weekly, and others maybe still need to engage with their library.
But yeah, it is at least going to the library and visiting it, and not necessarily talk to a librarian, but just walking in the library and check what is there. It's not only a way to learn what we can get from the library, but also it's a way to talk, to keep having conversations with our children. And this is the other thing that I wanted to talk, and a lot of parents still are not aware of this, but our libraries offer this is almost 100, almost 1,000 things that people can take. They can borrow from the library, and you can see there all these things. They are incredible, and I did this several times. I like music. I took all these different instruments just to try them, to play. And you can see also articles of to cook, tools, toys. For parties, you can get a karaoke machine or that box to make popcorn. It's incredible. It's just right in the catalog library of things. You can spend time really to check what you can find there. But unfortunately, you cannot, because things are so specific in their name sometimes that you have to write library of things in the catalog, and then you're going to get all this, and you have to navigate the pages to get what you want. If not, if maybe you got something that you didn't want because you like to try it, just to see. So thank you so much, Gina, for coming. This is really good. Here you have the website and also the Facebook page, which is more interactive. Parents or readers can write what they are seeing in the Facebook page, can make comments, opinions. So that's cool. It's something cool to check. And sometimes there are even information about the community. And that's in case that you have any question later. That's my email address, martinb@wccls.org. So thank you again, Gina.
I want to thank everyone, and I also want to thank our facilitator, Martine, who is so committed to promoting literacy, early literacy, and connection to the library. And I also want to say that we are taping, as we said in the beginning, we are taping this webinar. So we hope that the quality of the tape will be good enough for us to release it and host it on demand. So if you know other parents or you're supporting families, you can help connect them to these basic 5 steps that will change the trajectory of a child's life by making them ready to read.